So by popular demand, let's take a look at how we can model shoelaces. And there can be actually quite complicated because they're long tubular objects. And also, like in real life, shoelaces are not flat like a knife. They just twist and bend and curve a lot. To model those evenly, if I, for example, click here my polygon model, you can see that the subdivision amount is very nice and even, and all the different cross sections step by step start to arc and rotate, so it really looks like a natural piece of material that flows over the shoe, and by the geometry of the shoe is being kind of like deformed and rotated. And that's very difficult to do just by plain extruding and rotating polygon cross sections. Those smaller parts here actually can be much better be done quickly with polygon modeling because they're not really very long, as you can see. So maybe let's take a look at those for a moment. Let's go into edit mode and let's select one. So you see, when I started building this one, I created like a dummy one. It's basically nothing else than a cube where I opened two faces and then I extruded it out and gave it a little bit of natural deformation. And then to build those, I started basically one cube at a side, which means kind of like this was my original cube. And then the top face, I started extruding out along this direction and then always rotated the piece a little bit, copied and rotated the element to here, basically copy and paste it, and then started just to make slight mesh variations. So it's not that each piece I restarted by hand. You can see that the starting points are actually all the same. So I just built this one once and then copied and copied and copied and copied and copied and copied and just started, yeah, modifying them so they don't look all the same. Because again, devil is in the detail, and if I zoom in very closely, you can see there are still some issues there. It intersects a little bit, but again, when you make a rendering, you will see the shoe maybe from this distance and you will not see it from that up close. So some of the inaccuracies you can get away with. So now let's take a look at the bigger shoelace, how we could build this one, because that one in Maya is a little bit difficult to do only with polygons. So let me turn on my shoelace model. So how could we now build this one? Let's show everything and then all you and height. So you see I have, for example, down here a NURBS curve. It's actually a circle, and then I pushed and pulled and scaled some of these points so that it gets the cross section kind of like of my polygonal model. And here I have a NURBS curve which I drew in Maya, so it follows my polygon line. The nice thing about NURBS is they always come with fantastic, perfect UV coordinates, unlike polygonal modeling where the UV texturing can really be a pain. With NURBS, it is just perfect. There's something else you could say. It is just that way. So now, how do we create, for example, this curve? Well, you could go to curves and then start with an EP curve. Let's go into maybe a top view, and I will work on this side. So I start the curve here, and then I place few points. And while I'm drawing from the top view, I try to imagine how my curve would, how could I say that, flow in 3D space, so I tried to put in the correct amount of points. And here's my flat curve. Now I could go to control vertex, and then let's make this actually a three-dimensional curve. So I start pushing and pulling some of those points up and down. This one maybe should go to there. This one go to there. Yeah, this actually looks pretty spot on. Maybe this one goes up a little bit. In case, for example, you have not enough points, and either you can delete the curve and redraw it, or you can adjust those the control vertices. So let me go to this curve and control vertex. For example, at the beginning I had not enough points, so I needed to move all these points backwards, and then my curve was too short, but that's not really a big deal, because once your curve is too short, you can select the last point and go to add points, and that basically lets you to continue drawing the curve. It's kind of like extruding. And then with this curve done, let's go and add a circle. And I would like to rotate this circle by 90 degrees. And let's scale it. Now I can use maybe this one as adjustment, and let's scale it maybe this way a little bit. And at this point, I might have to go in by hand and push and pull some of the vertices. So I would like to flatten the sides a little bit more. And yeah, here you can see, way too big, way too thick. So maybe something more like this will work. Okay, let's go into top view. And I'm more than sure this thing is too wide. So I'm scaling it down a little bit. Let's go to object mode. So I can move it and then maybe scale it and rotate it and see if it actually fits in correctly. And yeah, it looks like proportion wise this one is good. Okay, so can move this one back to where this curve was. Then I can rotate it a little bit, kind of like facing perpendicular that curve. And this curve, or my path that I created, actually is too much on the ground. So I have to select some of these control points here and move them up. So they're kind of like at the center of my lace object, maybe like this. Okay, then this one we also have to move up a little bit. And at this point, now we're ready to create a surface. So go to surfaces, there is the extrude command. Let's take a look at all the different options we have. So you want to select your profile, you want to select your path, and then let's click extrude. And there's now our NURBS surface. For most parts, actually, this looks also pretty good, but we have to do a little bit of adjustment. So you see, for example, up here, this geometry piece is not correctly rotated. And that's also another thing that's really nice about NURBS modeling, because I can go ahead, select those, And then where's my rotation widget? Why is this rotation widget up there? And this is way too big. Oh well. So I'm trying to maybe try to look at this kind of like perpendicular, and then I'm going to click on the yellow ring and rotate this one. Oh, looks like I missed some points. So let's select all these points again and rotate. Let's try to look at it perpendicular and rotate it. Let's do it here and rotate it. And for example, this one won't be flat, or will be slightly arced. Select this one. And you know, this is not rocket science, so I don't necessarily have to make this super perfect, which is why I just rotate to the view and then use the yellow rotation, because I don't necessarily need any specific precision in this case. And probably the inaccuracies I'm going to build in this way will make it look a lot more natural. Then let's go to object mode. And what object do we have? That's a poly surface. I would like to have my NURBS surface. Okay, so you see, we basically blocked out most of our NURBS model. So at this point, the NURBS surface, we, for example, can convert into a polygon surface, because like here, the end needs to have a different design, so it's very blocky. So if you want to continue working with polygons, you could go to Modify, Convert, and then NURBS to Polygon. Let's see what options we have. We would like to have quads and standard fit, tessellation, control points, and apply. Perfect. So what we have now is actually a polygonal model, which will be a lot easier to work with. If I turn subsurface on, see again, it's nice and smooth. And then if I go into vertex mode, I can go ahead and maybe select those points here. And then, hold on, before I do this, I would like to have a little bit more of geometry added. So I'm going to insert loop cut and add loop cut down here, and I add another one down there. Okay, so the main reason for that was if I go into vertex mode now and I select all those points, and then I'm going to scale. I can scale those along this axis. And as you can see, it starts pinching the surface together a little bit more the way how I want it to be. And let's try to maintain somewhat circular profile. This one has to get a little bit tighter as well. Okay, this here, this transition I don't like. And that is because I need another loop cut there. There. This looks more or less a little bit what I'm looking for. And then you basically can continue modeling and changing this shoelace. And what's really, really important is just don't model the shoelace next to the shoe. Really try to model it so that it flows over the shoe. So it really looks like those two objects are by real life physics interacting with each other. And that will then give it a more leger or common look to it. And the NURBS modeling could be pushed a little bit further. You could work with isoprams and insert them there instead of just converting it to polygons and then doing it. However, I find the polygonal modeling at that stage to be a lot quicker and more efficient. So I'm going to delete this and see there are a few details that bug me a little bit. For example, let's go into polygon view and let's go to here and select those points. They have to go back a little bit. This is way too tight. Here, that clear tape goes over it, so maybe this can be a little bit tighter. That is okay. Yeah, and then to close this, you could select this one, Control E to extrude, but looks like I have something turned on, so let's go to extrude. Oh, extrude vertex. Well, that makes sense. Should have had edge selected. And then extrude. And then we can, for example, make a small scale, make another extrude, and then scale this down more. And then keep this a little bit open. From a distance again, you don't really see it, but this will create really nice soft edges, and then for the rendering, that will look dramatically better. And yeah, so that is the way how you model shoelaces. But it shouldn't really stop with the shoelaces. And you see that to fake realism a little bit, I copied and pasted some kind of like torus or scaled donuts onto that surface. And then I tried to rotate them and make them flow over the surface. For example, if I go to this one and let's loop select this loop, you see I always in each object try to make that loop to be right on top of the surface. So I can use it a little bit as a visual helper. And for rotating this one, again, if you double click on the rotate tool, you can select the object and then the local, because then it is so much easier to rotate an object along its own individual axis than having to use a different rotation method. And then I copy and paste it and move them along. And let's show the rest of my model. And again, you see here they intersect. So the geometry isn't necessarily super perfect, but as I said, you will see it from here, or you will see it from here. You won't really make a rendering from up close there. And based off because of the distance, some of the inaccuracies you simply don't see. If you have the time to model it, go ahead, do it. It's good practice. But if it's not necessarily required, then you can get away with it. But you see that having those metal rings on there, contrast to not having the metal rings, adds a really nice finish to the model. Without them, something feels like it's missing. I could, of course, make this mesh really dense and then cut faces into it. So I built in the holes for the threading to go through, not the threading, the shoelaces to go through. That's one possibility as well. In my case, I just wanted to have metallic metal rings around the shoelaces where the shoelaces go into the shoe. So I would say we reached our end for the modeling of this shoe. I hope that I answered most of your questions and gave you some good tips and tricks and perspectives in how to start, for example, from a very simple uh, flat shape, then going into blocking out the basic proportions, and then from that building the sole as well as the shoe, and then step by step uh, sculpting the shoe model. And again, the rule here really is start simple and add details when you need it, and always have reference images or a reference object next to you so you could study it. Otherwise, it will be really difficult to build a really good looking shoe out of pure imagination when you never did that before. And then in the next video, I will show you how we can UV unwrap this.